Hi, I'm Father Ken. I've been here for a few years, about 4 years or so. I don't think I've ever had this particular Mass before. I'm from New York City, from Manhattan. I was born and raised there. I love my own city of New York. I got my undergraduate college degree, the first of Fordham, from Fordham University on the Lincoln Center campus. That's the one in Midtown Manhattan. And now I am a retired college history professor. I did that for 40 years, all over the country. I've been there. I'm also a writer. I've worked in business and industry insurance in Manhattan, one insurance firm across from Penn Station, New York, right from where the Knicks play there, the one at Madison Avenue. Now, in this part of my life here, I am at UB, I'm at the law school. I work a number of cases. To date, I've had a little over 200 cases. Most of that is in criminal law, more specifically still in homicides. A lot of these cases are on television there, or in the shows like 2020, Dateline, what's the other one, 48 Hours, something like that there. As one recent person said to me at UB, I've led 3 lives already there. And anyway, that's too negative a topic to talk about on a Sunday morning, so let's kind of put that aside and change the venue there. We are in the in-between time right now, in between Easter and also, on the other hand, Ascension, which is this coming Thursday, and Pentecost a few weeks from now. Pentecost is the time when the Holy Spirit descends upon the apostles. It's the birthday of the church. And since we're the church, it's our birthday indeed as well. Now, in the readings we saw today, take the gospel first. This is John's gospel. Jesus is at the Last Supper with his disciples. It's a very long Last Supper in John's gospel there. And he's telling his disciples, his apostles, I'm not going to be with you much longer, but you've always got to imitate the virtue of love because it's so important, and you're going to use it even when it's most difficult. And then that first reading from the Acts of the Apostles, which was actually written by Luke, the author of the third gospel. So he wrote 2 works, the gospel and the Acts, about 5 to 8 years apart, something like that there. The apostles are talking among themselves. They know how difficult this is going to be. We got to show love even when it's under very trying and indeed very, very difficult circumstances. So what do we have today? We've got to always try to emulate the virtue of love, whether it be convenient or inconvenient. We live in very troubled times today. But the thing is, even when a crisis comes, as the saying goes, all things shall pass. Even when it's at its darkest, light is at the end of the tunnel, and we've still mandated to love no matter what happens to us. For example, go back a couple of years ago with COVID-19. Oh yeah, we all remember that, the pandemic there, sure. But you know, other people have suffered throughout history as well under sometimes very similar circumstances. For example, COVID was compared to something that hit the world about 100 years earlier. In 1918, 1919, leave this to a history professor, near the end of World War I, it was called the Spanish flu. Now, when I wrote a book a couple years ago, I said 30 million people died there, and that's pretty accurate. Somewhere between 20 to 30 million people died. The first wave was bad. The second wave was even worse. Like I say, it was a bad, bad thing, and yet this too shall pass. People still had to love under those very, very difficult circumstances. Wasn't easy, we know that. In our country with COVID-19, we had 1 million people died here in America, 6 million throughout the world. In my own hometown of New York, they were dying at the rate of 1,000 a day, something like that there. That's very, very worse. But this too shall pass. We're still mandated to love. That commandment is still upon us, as the people during the Spanish flu had to do it as well, as bad as the thing was. By the way, as a point of interest, it didn't get the name Spanish flu because it began in Spain. We know for a fact it did not begin there. Where to begin? Maybe France across the Pyrenees Mountains, maybe the UK, the United Kingdom, maybe someplace in Asia, maybe even somewhere here in America. We had just gotten involved in World War I at the very, very end. We don't know where it began. And so, of course, you ask, well, if that's the case, then how did they get the name of Spanish flu? Well, they got the name because during World War I, as during World War II, Spain was neutral. And while other countries were reporting on the tragedies of World War I, Spain didn't have to do it. So Spain spent a lot of time reporting on the flu, the pandemic, and that's where it got its name of the Spanish flu. That's where indeed it came from there. You all remember the Spanish flu, don't you? 1918, 1919? Yeah. Sadly, some actually raised their hands for that one there. But they survived. But they survived. And by the way, in our own country, once it came to an end, we know what followed in the 1920s, the Roaring Twenties, the Jazz Age there. We can love even in the most trying of circumstances. So how about us today? There's a lot of things wrong in the world. It's hard to love. Let's be honest with it. We turn on the TVs every night. We see the war in Ukraine, elderly people, young kids suffering over there in Ukraine. We look at the war in Gaza. Besides the tragedy of the warfare, there's starvation going on there. Little babies dying in the hospital. It's terrible. How about climate change? Well, we saw that, not this past Christmas, but the other Christmas, a year or so ago, where 47 people died in our own area here. And politics. Oh, we don't want to hear about that. We know how negative that is, politics right here in our own country. Personally, I stay away from the topic, and I tell people, like students, my political philosophy can be summed up in one simple sentence that's easy to accept. Politicians, like a baby's diapers, should be changed frequently and for the same reason. I'm going to go with that there. Okay. We get discouraged. That's part of the human condition. We get very, very discouraged. But the mandate to love is there. In between the time of Easter and then Ascension and Pentecost, where the Spirit comes upon us, we're still commanded to love. And that greatest gift of love will again be given to us on this Pentecost. We still got to keep up the faith. We still got to show love in our daily lives. And that means we're reminded of people who have loved us and whom we've loved in return, even if they're not physically present. Think back a couple of weeks ago, April 20th, an anniversary, a very dark anniversary. That marked the 25th anniversary of the shootings at Columbine High School down in Colorado, a place called Littleton, Colorado. 13 students, I think one was a teacher, were killed by a couple of other students. I didn't hear it on the news that day. I was teaching in Boston. I was going down to the Jersey Shore. I had accepted the job for the next semester down there. But I heard about it the next day. What a terrible tragedy. And look what it gave rise to. Other shootings since that time. Newtown in Connecticut, Parkland in Florida, Uvalde in Texas, Virginia Tech, a college. 31 people died there. But the parents who lost their kids that day, they're reminded of love the kids showed to them and they showed to their kids. Love sustains us during the most trying of times. So what's the takeaway this afternoon? In this in-between time of Easter and Ascension/Pentecost, the commandment to love is there. We can't get by it. No one said it's easy. Well, we're going to do it nonetheless. The people 100 years ago with the Spanish flu didn't find it easy, and yet they carried on. And by the way, from the readings, first century Palestine, it wasn't easy there. It was an occupied land, occupied by the Romans, and yet they carried on. We have to love during good times and bad times, whether convenient or inconvenient. Our challenge today is simply this: do we try to love the best we can, and do we appreciate the greatest gift that the Spirit can possibly give us, the gift of love, and that we show at all times. What a fantastic gift to have, what a fantastic gift to show.